Last night, Konami dropped a huge patch update to the game, version 2.1. Of course, not to be misconstrued with the new Among Us patch. In this video, I'll go over all the important changes, and I'll leave a link in the description down below for you to read through the full policy documents by yourself. You're not gonna read 64 pages of policy by yourself, are you? Well, number one, the first and biggest change, 15 years in the making, finally, is the ability to double sleeve your cards. You ever see those random shaky cam 360p locals in Japan? And you look at their cards and you wonder to yourself and think, damn, why is it so thick, boy? Well, the reason their cards are so thick is because they've been double sleeving this whole time. Hell, some of them even triple sleeve. The advantage of double sleeving is being able to use all this cool, fancy artwork, and in most cases, literally just, that, without damaging the artwork itself. It's been officialized now. I think it was always the case before, technically, but people kind of just did it anyway. Now you are not allowed to use a dice for counters to represent it numerically. Rather, you can use dice, but it has to be used for each individual one. What does that mean? Well, technically Jackal King, for example, is a card that can actually just go up to 12 counters pretty regularly and consistently. Now you have to use 12 individual dice as counters if you want to track that. You can't just use 2 dice with the number 6 face up. You have to use 12 dice. Well, that's just great. I mean, I can't see any issues here this is going to cause at all. Hey, I don't even know what card that is.
Stand by good. Hold on, chain jackal.
Clothing and other accessories may not contain offensive wording or pictures. Well, damn, I'm not allowed to wear my explicit 2D anime girl t-shirt. I can't depict myself wearing attire supporting far-right hate groups. My constitutional rights to freedom have been affected. Also, your clothes have to be clean. Well, I guess we're just disqualifying half the player base now. The next change is something including YuGiOh Neuron, which, if you guys might have seen my video on it before, it's a pretty cool app that lets you track life points and search card translations and erratas and stuff like that. A few things about this one. The first and foremost, most important one here is you cannot submit your deck list online. I think at first when everyone saw this, they were like, oh! Yeah, no, you still are not able to submit your deck list online. And another point here as well is that when it comes to life point tracking, you still need to use paper, despite the fact that Neuron has a history that shows you where and when life points were deducted and taken. I guess really it's just an official way now, technically, to be able to check card translations and erratas. Coaching has been a little bit more clarified. When you call a judge and ask a question like, hey, if I activate this Widow Anchor on a Beatrice that's already had infinite impermanence resolved on her, what happens? That's not allowed. It's been clarified. You've never been able to do this, but it's been clarified now that you aren't allowed to ask a question like this. However, if you ask, will Widow Anchor steal a monster that has 3 spells in the graveyard if that monster has already been negated, that question is okay. And I know that half of you listening right now probably didn't actually tell the difference between those two questions. It's really subtle and there's a lot of nuance involved. It's kind of a gray area, but basically you can't ask a hypothetical what if. You need to either commit to a play or be very, very direct and specific about the actual PSET and game mechanics that you're asking a question about. You can't just ask a judge, hey, you think this is a good card to activate here? You should be home playing Halo or something. Loops, brother. There's a whole section dedicated to loops now. There is controlled loops and infinite loops. Infinite loop is something like pole position, which has been clarified, and I don't know if this is technically a ruling update or not, but it's been very explicitly stated that if pole position causes an infinite loop, well, it just destroys itself by game mechanics or sends itself by game mechanics. It goes away. If you don't know what that is, pole position loop is basically a card interaction which stops your opponent from putting any cards onto the field because of invoked Purgatrio. As the attack values of Purgatrio shift back and forth infinitely because of pole position, the new clarified and official rule is pole position will simply go to the grave by game mechanics. Note-taking is something that's been explained and expanded upon a little bit, basically just clarifying that you can write down and write notes of mandatory effects. For example, you could write something like infinite impermanence has resolved on spell column 3, but you still can't use a dice to track that zone. You can't use a dice on something like multi-roll, for example. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. There's a couple more random things here and there, but nothing particularly major. I went over the big ones here. Do recommend you take a look at the blog post for yourself. Hit the subscribe button, please, and help me get 100K. I hope you enjoyed this quick little summary, and until next time, adios.